Marcella awoke with a start, the beeping of heart monitors filling the silence of the hospital room. The harsh white light from the overhead fluorescents intensified the throbbing pain in her head. She blinked several times, trying to comprehend where she was and why everything seemed so confusing. She lifted her hand, only to notice the tubes and wires connected to her body. The sterile smell of disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of fresh flowers beside the bed created a surreal feeling of disconnect between reality and dream. What happened? She whispered to herself, trying to recall anything, any detail about her life. Before she could process her thoughts, the door opened quietly. A middle-aged woman with carefully pinned gray hair entered the room. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, but there was an unwavering determination in her gaze. "Marcella, dear, you're awake," she exclaimed, hurrying to the bedside. Marcella blinked, trying to focus on the woman now holding her hand. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse and uncertain. The woman hesitated, a flash of pain crossing her face. "It's me, Helena, your mother," she replied softly. "You had an accident, my love. But it's okay now, you're going to be fine." Before Marcella could react, a man entered the room. He appeared to be in his 30s, with a worried expression. "Hi, Marcella. It's me, Lucas, your brother," he said, approaching with a forced smile. Marcella looked at the two of them, desperately trying to find some glimmer of recognition, but everything was a blur. I don't remember you," she finally admitted, tears starting to form in her eyes. Helena squeezed Marcella's hand tighter. "It's normal, dear. The doctor said you might have temporary memory loss because of the accident. We'll help you remember, we'll get through this together." Lucas nodded, placing a hand on Marcella's shoulder. "We're here for you, always." Marcella felt a mixture of relief and frustration. Despite the comfort of their words, the emptiness in her mind was overwhelming. She tried to grasp at any memory, anything, but it was like trying to catch smoke. The following days were a haze of medical visits and examinations. The hospital became a familiar yet oppressive environment. Every corner, every corridor seemed to carry echoes of something she should remember but couldn't. One afternoon, while sitting in bed looking out the window, Helena entered with a photo album. "I thought this might help," she said, placing the album on Marcella's lap. Marcella opened the album with trembling hands, slowly flipping through the pages. Each image showed happy moments, birthday parties, family trips, celebrations. But none triggered a memory. It was like looking at someone else's life. Helena sat beside her, pointing to a photo of Marcella as a child, covered in paint after an art project. "You always loved painting. You'd spend hours in your makeshift studio in the garage. Maybe this can bring some memories back," she suggested. Marcella forced a smile, but frustration began to grow inside her. "I'm sorry, Mom, I can't remember." Helena stroked Marcella's face gently. "Don't worry, my love. We'll take it slow. The important thing is that you're here with us." That night, alone in the hospital room, Marcella stared at the ceiling, feeling an overwhelming sense of loss. She didn't know what she had lost, but the absence was palpable. Worse, she felt a growing suspicion that there was more to the accident and her amnesia than anyone was telling her. The next day, during her morning checkup, the doctor mentioned the severity of her head injury. "It's not uncommon for memory loss to occur with trauma like yours," he explained. "Sometimes, it takes weeks, months, or even longer for memories to return, if they return at all." Marcella nodded, though the uncertainty gnawed at her. The only thing she could do was wait and hope that something would trigger her memories. But as the days passed, she grew more restless. The faces around her, the kind words, they all felt like an elaborate play in which she didn't know her role. One evening, Lucas brought in a box filled with Marcella's personal items from home. "Maybe some of these things will help," he said, setting the box on the bed. Marcella sifted through the contents, a favorite book with worn pages, a necklace that seemed oddly familiar, and a small diary. She opened the diary, hoping to find something, anything that could connect her to her past. The entries were sparse and written in a hurried script, detailing mundane events and fleeting thoughts. But one entry stood out. May 15th, I have to confront them about it. This secret can't stay buried forever. It will destroy us. Marcella's heart raced as she read the words. What secret? Who was she planning to confront? She looked up at Lucas, who was watching her closely. Do you know anything about this? She asked, holding up the diary. Lucas frowned, shaking his head. No, but maybe it's something that happened just before the accident. Don't stress about it too much, sis. Just focus on getting better. But Marcella couldn't shake the feeling that this was important. As the days turned into weeks, she clung to the diary, reading and rereading the entries, searching for clues. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that uncovering this secret was key to unlocking her memories. And so, with a resolve she hadn't felt since waking up in the hospital, Marcella decided that she wouldn't just passively wait for her memories to return. She would actively seek them out, starting with the mystery hinted at in her diary. The morning Marcella was discharged from the hospital was overcast, with gray clouds hanging low in the sky. As Lucas helped her into the car, she glanced back at the building that had become both a refuge and a prison. The drive home was quiet, punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional rattle of gravel under the tires. Their house was a modest, two-story structure with a garden that seemed slightly neglected. As they pulled into the driveway, Marcella felt a strange mix of familiarity and alienation. She knew she had lived here, but it felt like stepping into someone else's life. Inside, the house was warm and inviting. Helena had gone to great lengths to make it feel like home. Family photos lined the walls, and the scent of fresh bread wafted from the kitchen. Marcella tried to take it all in, but the sense of emptiness persisted. Helena guided her to her bedroom, which was neatly organized and filled with personal touches, books, art supplies, and a small desk cluttered with papers. I've kept everything as you left it, Helena said softly. Take your time to settle in. Marcella nodded, walking around the room and running her fingers over the surfaces. Each item seemed to hold a story she couldn't remember. She picked up a framed photograph of herself with a group of friends, all smiling brightly. The faces were familiar, yet distant. After unpacking her few belongings from the hospital, Marcella sat at her desk and opened her diary again. The entries still didn't make sense, but they were the only tangible connection she had to her past. She spent hours poring over them, hoping for a spark of recognition. Days turned into a routine. Helena and Lucas tried to engage Marcella in activities that might trigger her memory, cooking her favorite meals, watching old family videos, and taking walks through familiar neighborhoods. Despite their efforts, the fog in her mind remained stubbornly thick. One afternoon, as she was sorting through a box of old letters and mementos, Marcella found a small, intricately carved wooden box. It had no key, but she managed to pry it open. Inside, she discovered a collection of childhood drawings and notes. One note, in particular, caught her attention. It was a simple, handwritten letter. Dear Marcella, remember that no matter what happens, you are stronger than you think. Love, Dad. Tears welled up in her eyes as she read the words. She remembered her father vaguely, a kind, gentle man who had passed away when she was young. This small connection to him was both comforting and heartbreaking. That evening, Marcella shared the letter with Helena. Her mother's face softened as she read it. Your father always believed in you, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. He would be so proud of how strong you are being. Marcella nodded, clutching the letter tightly. I wish I could remember more about him, she whispered. Helena wrapped her in a warm embrace. It will come back, darling. Give it time. As the days went by, Marcella grew closer to Lucas. They spent hours talking, and he shared stories from their childhood, painting a picture of a happy, adventurous girl who loved to explore and create. Despite the bond they were rebuilding, Marcella couldn't shake the feeling that Lucas was holding something back. One night, unable to sleep, Marcella decided to take a walk through the house. The quiet creak of the floorboards beneath her feet seemed louder in the silence of the night. She wandered into the living room and stared at the family photos again. There was one photo that always caught her eye, a picture of her parents on their wedding day. They looked so happy, so full of life. As she gazed at the photo, she noticed something she hadn't before. In the background, there was a man standing apart from the crowd, watching the couple with an intense expression. Marcella felt a chill run down her spine. Who was he, and why did he seem so familiar? Determined to find answers, she resolved to confront her family about the man in the photo. The diary entry about confronting someone seemed more relevant now than ever. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, Marcella woke up with a sense of determination. The mysterious man in the wedding photo had given her a focus, a direction. She needed to know who he was and why he seemed important. After breakfast, she approached Helena and Lucas, who were sitting at the kitchen table, chatting quietly. "Mom, Lucas, I need to ask you something," Marcella began, trying to keep her voice steady. "There's a photo in the living room from your wedding day. Who is the man in the background?" Helena and Lucas exchanged a quick glance, and Marcella noticed the tension in their eyes. "Which man, dear?" Helena asked, feigning ignorance. Marcella retrieved the photo and placed it on the table. "This man," she said, pointing to the figure in the background. "He looks familiar, but I can't place him." Helena sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "That's Eduardo," she admitted. "He was a close family friend, but it's complicated." Lucas frowned, his jaw tightening. "There's no need to dig into the past, Marcella. Focus on getting better." Marcella felt a surge of frustration. "But I need to know, Lucas. I feel like he's important. Please, tell me more." Helena reached out and took Marcella's hand. "Eduardo was your father's best friend," she said softly. "They were inseparable growing up, but things changed after your father passed away. We lost touch with him." Marcella sensed there was more to the story. "Why did you lose touch?" Helena hesitated, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "After your father's death, Eduardo tried to help us, but there were misunderstandings, arguments. It was too painful for all of us." Lucas stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "That's enough, Mom," he snapped. "Marcella doesn't need to hear this right now." Marcella's frustration grew. "I do need to hear it, Lucas. I need to understand what happened." Lucas stormed out of the room, leaving Marcella and Helena in an uncomfortable silence. Helena sighed, rubbing her temples. "I'll tell you what I can, but it might be better if you spoke to Eduardo yourself. Maybe seeing him will help trigger some memories." Marcella nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Do you know where I can find him?" Helena retrieved a small address book from a drawer and flipped through it. "Here," she said, handing Marcella a piece of paper with an address on it. "This is the last address we had for him. I don't know if he's still there, but it's a start." Later that day, Marcella called Diego and asked him to drive her to the address. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as they drove through the city, each familiar landmark triggering a vague sense of déjà vu. When they arrived at the address, Marcella's heart pounded in her chest. The house was modest, with a well-kept garden and a small porch. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door. After a few moments, the door opened, revealing an older man with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Marcella," he said softly, as if her name were a cherished memory. "It's been a long time." "Eduardo," Marcella replied, her voice trembling. I need your help. I need to remember." Eduardo nodded, stepping aside to let her and Diego in. "Of course. Come in, please." They sat in Eduardo's cozy living room, surrounded by mementos and photographs. Marcella's eyes wandered over the pictures, lingering on a few that featured her father and Eduardo in their younger days. "Your father and I were like brothers," Eduardo began, his voice filled with nostalgia. "We did everything together. When he passed away, it was a devastating blow for all of us. I tried to be there for your family, but things got complicated. Marcella leaned forward, eager for more details. Complicated how? Eduardo sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. There were misunderstandings, as your mother said. After your father's death, I discovered some things about his business dealings that I didn't agree with. I tried to protect your family, but your mother didn't see it that way. We argued, and eventually, we drifted apart. Marcella absorbed his words, feeling a mix of confusion and clarity. What kind of business dealings? Eduardo hesitated. I think it's best if your mother explains that part. But know this, Marcella, your father loved you more than anything. He would want you to find the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Marcella nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Thank you, Eduardo. I needed to hear that. As they left Eduardo's house, Marcella felt a mix of emotions, relief, hope, and a growing determination to uncover the truth about her past. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever came next. As the days passed, Marcella couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. She spent hours piecing together fragments of memories, conversations, and old photos. Despite the progress, she felt like she was missing a crucial part of the puzzle. One afternoon, while Marcella was sitting in her room, her phone rang. It was Diego. Hey, Marcella. How are you holding up? He asked, his voice warm and comforting. I'm okay, Diego. Just trying to make sense of everything, she replied, grateful for his concern. Listen, I was thinking, maybe it would help if we visited some of the places you used to go. It might jog your memory, Diego suggested. Marcella considered his offer. That sounds like a good idea. Where do we start? How about we meet at the old cafe where we used to hang out? It's a special place for us, Diego said. Marcella agreed, feeling a sense of anticipation. She met Diego at the cafe, a quaint little place with cozy booths and the rich aroma of coffee in the air. As they sat down, Diego ordered their usual drinks, trying to recreate the familiar routine. So, how have you been? Marcella asked, trying to fill the silence. Diego smiled. I've been worried about you, but it's good to see you out and about. Do you remember this place at all? Marcella looked around, taking in the details, the worn wooden floors, the eclectic mix of vintage posters on the walls, and the friendly barista who greeted them with a smile. It's faint, but there's something familiar about it, she admitted. Diego reached across the table and took her hand. We'll figure this out together. You don't have to do this alone. Marcella felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, Diego. Your support means a lot to me. As they sipped their coffee, Diego began to recount stories of their time together. He spoke of their late-night study sessions, impromptu road trips, and countless moments of laughter and friendship. Marcella listened intently, trying to connect the dots between his stories and her fragmented memories. After they finished their coffee, Diego suggested they take a walk through the nearby park. The park was a place they had often visited, a sanctuary of sorts with its lush greenery and serene atmosphere. As they strolled along the winding paths, Marcella felt a sense of peace wash over her. They reached a small pond where ducks swam lazily, and Diego pointed to a bench under a large oak tree. We used to sit there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, he said, a wistful smile on his face. Marcella sat down on the bench, closing her eyes and letting the sounds and smells of the park envelop her. She could almost hear the echoes of their past conversations, faint but persistent. Do you remember anything? Diego asked gently. Marcella opened her eyes, shaking her head. Not really. It's like trying to hold water in my hands. But being here with you, it feels right. Diego nodded, understanding her struggle. It's a start. We just have to keep trying. As they continued their walk, Marcella felt a growing sense of determination. She was not alone in this journey. With Diego by her side, she felt more confident in facing whatever truths awaited her. Later that evening, back at home, Marcella sat with her diary, reflecting on the day's events. She wrote down her thoughts and feelings, hoping that the act of writing would help solidify her memories. She knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but with an ally like Diego, she felt ready to confront the mysteries of her past. Marcella closed her diary and looked out the window at the setting sun. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a beautiful reminder that even after the darkest days, light always returned. She took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of hope and determination. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and discoveries, but for the first time in a long while, Marcella felt ready to face them. The next morning, Marcella woke up with a sense of purpose. She had a new resolve to uncover the secrets of her past. After breakfast, she decided to revisit some places from her childhood, hoping they might trigger more memories. Diego offered to accompany her, and they set out together. Their first stop was the old library where Marcella used to spend hours reading. As they walked through the familiar aisles, she felt a faint sense of nostalgia. She ran her fingers along the spines of the books, trying to remember the stories she once loved. "Do you remember coming here?" Diego asked, his voice gentle. Marcella nodded slowly. "A little. I remember the smell of the books and the quiet. It was my escape." Diego smiled. "You always had your nose in a book. You were the smartest person I knew." Marcella felt a flicker of pride at his words. They continued exploring the library, but no significant memories surfaced. Undeterred, they moved on to their next destination, the park where Marcella used to play as a child. The park was bustling with families and children, the air filled with laughter and the scent of fresh grass. Marcella walked along the paths, her eyes scanning the playground and the surrounding trees. She stopped at a large oak tree, its branches stretching wide and offering a comforting shade. "I used to climb this tree," Marcella said, a small smile playing on her lips. "I remember feeling like I could see the whole world from up there." Diego chuckled. "You were always so adventurous. Do you want to try climbing it again?" Marcella laughed, shaking her head. "I think I'll pass this time. But it's good to know some things haven't changed." As they continued their walk, Diego suggested they visit an old friend of Marcella's who might have more information about her past. Marcella agreed, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervousness. They arrived at a cozy little house with a garden full of blooming flowers. Diego knocked on the door, and a moment later, a woman in her late 30s answered. Her face lit up with surprise and joy. "Marcella. It's so good to see you." Marcella smiled, though she didn't recognize the woman. "Hi. I'm sorry, but I don't remember you." The woman's expression softened. "I'm Clara. We were best friends in school. Come in, let's catch up." They sat in Clara's living room, sipping tea as Clara recounted stories from their childhood. Marcella listened intently, hoping for any spark of recognition. Clara mentioned their school projects, sleepovers, and the time they tried to run away from home to join the circus. Marcella laughed at the absurdity of the story, feeling a warmth spread through her. "It sounds like we had a lot of fun." Clara nodded, smiling. "We did. You were always so determined and fearless. I'm sure you'll find your way back to yourself." As they prepared to leave, Clara handed Marcella a small box. "I found this while cleaning out my attic. It's some of your old stuff. Maybe it will help." Marcella thanked her and promised to stay in touch. Back at home, she opened the box with Diego by her side. Inside, she found old photos, letters, and a small journal. She carefully examined each item, hoping for a breakthrough. One photo caught her eye. It was a picture of her, Diego, and another friend, taken at a beach. In the background, she noticed the same man from her parents' wedding photo, Eduardo. Marcella's heart raced as she realized he had been a significant part of her life. She showed the photo to Diego. "Why didn't you tell me Eduardo was in this picture?" Diego looked surprised. "I didn't notice him before. But it makes sense. He was close to your family." Marcella felt a surge of determination. We need to talk to him again. There's more to this story, and I need to know everything. Diego agreed, and they made plans to visit Eduardo the next day. Marcella knew she was getting closer to the truth, and with each step, she felt more confident and ready to face whatever came next. The following day, Marcella and Diego drove back to Eduardo's house, both of them filled with anticipation and a bit of anxiety. Marcella clutched the photograph they had found, determined to get more answers. When they arrived, Eduardo greeted them warmly and invited them inside. "We need to talk, Eduardo," Marcella began, showing him the photograph. "You were in this picture too. Why were you such a significant part of my life?" Eduardo's face softened as he looked at the photo. "Yes, I was close to your family, especially after your father's death. But there were things I kept from you, things I thought were better left buried." Marcella's heart raced. "What things?" "Please, Eduardo, I need to know the truth." Eduardo sighed, motioning for them to sit. "Your father was involved in some risky business deals. After he passed, I tried to protect your family from the fallout. But Helena didn't agree with my methods, and it caused a rift between us." Marcella felt a surge of anger and frustration. "Why didn't anyone tell me? I had a right to know." Eduardo nodded. "You did, but we thought we were protecting you. The truth is, your father's business dealings were dangerous. He was involved in something illegal, and I feared it would put you all at risk." Marcella sat back, trying to process this new information. "So my father, he wasn't who I thought he was." Eduardo shook his head. "He loved you dearly, Marcella. But he made mistakes, and he paid the price for them. I tried to clean up the mess, but it was too much for one person." Marcella's mind raced with questions. What exactly was he involved in? What kind of danger are we talking about? Eduardo hesitated, then continued. "He was part of a smuggling ring, bringing in rare and illegal goods. It started small, but it grew out of control. When he tried to leave, things went south. I believe his death was no accident, Marcella. He was murdered." Marcella gasped, the room spinning around her. "Murdered? Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" Eduardo's expression was pained. "We didn't have proof, and your mother wanted to protect you from the harsh reality. But I think now is the time for you to know everything. You're stronger than you realize, Marcella." Marcella's thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, sadness. She needed time to process this, but she also knew she couldn't stop now. "Thank you, Eduardo. I need to talk to my mother about this." As they left Eduardo's house, Marcella felt a storm brewing inside her. She was determined to confront her mother and demand the truth. When they arrived home, Helena was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "Mom, we need to talk," Marcella said, her voice trembling with emotion. Helena turned, seeing the determination in Marcella's eyes. "What is it, dear?" Marcella held up the photograph. "I know about Dad. I know about the smuggling and his murder. Why did you keep this from me?" Helena's face went pale, and she set down the knife she was holding. "Marcella, Why, Mom? I had a right to know." Marcella's voice rose, the anger and betrayal evident. Helena took a deep breath. "We thought we were protecting you. After your father's death, I didn't want you to live in fear or hatred. We hoped that by keeping you in the dark, you could live a normal life. But look where that got us," Marcella said bitterly. "I lost my memories, and now I'm discovering these terrible secrets. I need to know everything, Mom. I need to understand." Helena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You're right. You deserve the truth. Your father made mistakes, and it cost him his life. I tried to shield you from it, but in doing so, I kept you from the truth. I'm sorry, Marcella. I was only trying to protect you." Marcella felt a mixture of anger and sadness, but also a glimmer of understanding. "We can't change the past, but we can face the future together." No more secrets, okay? Helena embraced Marcella tightly. No more secrets. We face this together. As Marcella held her mother, she felt a sense of resolve. The path ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to uncover the truth and reclaim her life, no matter what it took. The following days were filled with tense conversations and emotional revelations. Marcella and Helena spent hours talking about the past, piecing together the fragmented memories and secrets. Despite the progress they were making, Marcella couldn't shake the feeling that something was still being hidden from her. One evening, as she was going through some old documents her mother had given her, she stumbled upon a letter tucked away in the back of a drawer. The letter was addressed to her father from someone named Miguel. As she read the contents, her heart sank. The letter detailed a plan to smuggle a particularly valuable item through the city, a plan that her father was heavily involved in. Miguel warned him about the dangers and insisted that they needed to be cautious, but it was clear that her father had ignored the advice. The final lines of the letter chilled Marcella to the bone. If anything goes wrong, Lucas will take the fall. Marcella's hands trembled as she held the letter. Her brother, Lucas, had been involved in this all along. She felt a mix of anger and betrayal. Why hadn't he told her? What else was he hiding? Determined to get answers, Marcella confronted Lucas the next morning. She found him in the garage, working on his car. "Lucas, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady but firm. Lucas looked up, surprised by the intensity in her eyes. "Sure, Marcella. What's up?" Marcella held up the letter. "I found this in Dad's old documents. Care to explain?" Lucas's face paled as he saw the letter. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice tense. "In a drawer. Why didn't you tell me you were involved in Dad's dealings? Why did you keep this from me?" Marcella demanded. Lucas sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "It was a long time ago, Marcella. I was young and stupid. I thought I could help Dad, but things got out of control. Why didn't you tell me?" Marcella's voice cracked. "I had a right to know. We're supposed to be a family, Lucas. No more secrets, remember?" Lucas looked down, shame evident in his eyes. "I wanted to protect you. After Dad died, I tried to clean up the mess, but it was too late. I didn't want you to get hurt." Marcella felt tears welling up in her eyes. "But I am hurt, Lucas. I feel like my whole life has been a lie." Lucas stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Marcella. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now that I was wrong. I should have trusted you." Marcella shook her head, pulling away. "I don't know if I can trust you now. I need some time to think." She turned and walked out of the garage, her mind racing with thoughts and emotions. She felt betrayed by her own brother, someone she had always trusted. As she walked through the house, she realized she needed to clear her head and figure out her next steps. Marcella decided to visit Diego. She needed someone to talk to, someone who wasn't involved in the tangled web of her family's secrets. When she arrived at his house, Diego greeted her with a concerned look. "Marcella, what's wrong?" She handed him the letter, watching as he read it. His expression grew serious. "I can't believe Lucas was involved in this. I'm so sorry, Marcella." Marcella sighed, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. "I don't know what to do, Diego. I feel like I can't trust anyone anymore." Diego placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You can trust me. We'll get through this together. Maybe it's time to confront Miguel and get his side of the story." Marcella nodded, feeling a spark of determination. "You're right. I need to get to the bottom of this, and I can't do it alone." They made plans to find Miguel and get answers. Marcella knew that confronting him would be difficult, but it was a necessary step in her journey to uncover the truth. She couldn't let her father's mistakes and her brother's betrayal define her future. With Diego by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they set out to find Miguel, Marcella couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and hope. The road ahead was uncertain, but she was determined to reclaim her life and uncover the full truth about her past. No more secrets. No more lies. She was ready to face the future head-on. Marcella and Diego spent the next few days tracking down Miguel. It wasn't easy, but with persistence and a few lucky breaks, they finally located him in a small town a few hours away. The town was quiet and unassuming, a stark contrast to the tumultuous emotions Marcella felt as they approached Miguel's house. Miguel was an older man, his face weathered by time and hardship. When he opened the door and saw Marcella, his eyes widened in surprise and then softened with recognition. "Marcella," he said quietly. "I didn't expect to see you." "We need to talk, Miguel," Marcella said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I found a letter you wrote to my father. I need to know the truth about what happened." Miguel hesitated, then nodded. "Come in. It's time you knew everything." They sat in Miguel's modest living room, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. Miguel took a deep breath before he began. "Your father and I were close, like brothers. We got involved in smuggling because it seemed like an easy way to make money. At first, it was harmless, just some rare items, nothing too dangerous. But then it escalated." Marcella listened intently, her heart pounding. "Escalated how?" "We started smuggling more dangerous items, things that attracted the wrong kind of attention. Your father wanted out, but it was too late. The people we were dealing with weren't the kind to let us walk away," Miguel explained, his voice heavy with regret. Marcella's mind raced with questions. Was my father's death really an accident? Miguel looked her in the eyes, his expression solemn. "No, it wasn't. He was murdered because he tried to leave the business. I tried to protect your family, but there was only so much I could do." Marcella felt a chill run down her spine. "Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us believe it was an accident?" Miguel sighed. "I thought it would be easier for you to move on if you didn't know the truth. And your mother wanted to protect you from the dangers we were facing." Marcella's thoughts turned to her mother. "She knew? She knew he was murdered and didn't tell me?" Miguel nodded. "She was scared, Marcella. We all were. After your father died, things got worse. I tried to help, but Helena pushed me away. She wanted to shield you from the ugliness of it all." Diego, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. "So what happened to the smuggling operation after my father died?" "It fell apart," Miguel said. "Without your father, the operation lost its backbone. The people we were dealing with moved on to other things. I tried to keep an eye on your family, but it was difficult." Marcella felt a mix of anger, sadness, and relief. She had finally uncovered the truth about her father's death, but it came with a heavy price. "Thank you for telling me, Miguel. I needed to know." Miguel nodded. "I'm sorry for everything, Marcella. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." As they left Miguel's house, Marcella felt a sense of closure, but also a deep sadness. Her father's past had cast a long shadow over her life, and she needed time to process everything she had learned. On the drive back, Diego reached over and took her hand. "How are you holding up?" Marcella sighed, leaning her head back against the seat. "I'm not sure. It's a lot to take in. But I feel like I'm finally starting to understand." Diego nodded. "You're strong, Marcella. We'll get through this together." Back at home, Marcella shared everything she had learned with Helena. Her mother listened quietly, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted to protect you," Helena said, her voice trembling. "I thought if you didn't know, you could have a normal life." Marcella took her mother's hands in hers. "I understand, Mom. But no more secrets, okay? We face everything together from now on." Helena nodded, hugging Marcella tightly. "No more secrets. I promise." As the days passed, Marcella felt a growing sense of peace. She had uncovered the truth about her father's death, and while it was painful, it also brought a sense of closure. She and Helena worked together to piece together their family's past, finding strength in their bond. One evening, as they were going through some old family photos, Helena found a letter addressed to Marcella. "I think you should read this," she said, handing it to her daughter. Marcella opened the letter, her heart pounding. It was from her father, written shortly before his death. In it, he expressed his love for her and his regret for the choices he had made. He urged her to be strong and to live her life to the fullest, despite the mistakes he had made. Tears filled Marcella's eyes as she read the letter. She felt a sense of connection to her father that she had been missing. She knew that, despite his flaws, he had loved her deeply. With her father's words in her heart, Marcella felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to move forward, to build a future free from the shadows of the past. And with her mother and Diego by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. Marcella knew that the final step in her journey to uncover the truth would be confronting those who had caused her father's death. She had to face the people behind the smuggling operation and ensure they paid for their crimes. With Diego and Helena by her side, she felt ready to take on whatever came next. Marcella spent the next few days gathering information and preparing for the confrontation. She reviewed the documents and notes she had collected, piecing together the puzzle of her father's dealings. She knew that to bring justice, she needed solid evidence. One evening, as they were going over their plans, Helena looked at Marcella with concern. "Are you sure about this, Marcella? These people are dangerous." Marcella nodded, determination in her eyes. "I have to do this, Mom. For Dad, and for us. We can't live in fear anymore." Diego placed a reassuring hand on Marcella's shoulder. "We're with you, Marcella. We'll make sure you're safe." They decided to confront the leaders of the smuggling ring at an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. It was a risky plan, but Marcella knew it was the only way to get the answers she needed. The night of the confrontation, Marcella, Diego, and Helena arrived at the warehouse. The air was thick with tension as they approached the building. Marcella's heart pounded in her chest, but she steeled herself for what was to come. Inside the warehouse, they found a group of men gathered around a table, discussing their next move. The leader, a tall man with a menacing presence, looked up as they entered. Well, what do we have here?" he sneered. Marcella stepped forward, her voice steady. "I know who you are and what you've done. My father was murdered because he tried to leave your operation. I'm here to make sure you pay for your crimes." The leader laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "And how do you plan to do that, little girl? You have no idea what you're up against." Marcella held up a stack of documents. "I have evidence. Documents, letters, everything I need to expose you and your operation. It's over." The leader's expression darkened. "You're making a big mistake, girl. You and your family should have stayed out of this." Diego stepped forward, his voice firm. "She's not alone. We're here to make sure justice is served." The tension in the room was palpable as the leader weighed his options. Finally, he signaled to his men. "Take them," he ordered. Before the men could move, the warehouse doors burst open and police officers swarmed in. Helena had called the police before they arrived, ensuring that they had backup. The officers quickly subdued the smugglers, arresting them and securing the evidence. Marcella watched as the leader was led away in handcuffs. She felt a sense of relief and triumph. It was over. The people responsible for her father's death were finally going to face justice. As the police processed the scene, an officer approached Marcella. "You did a brave thing, Mississippi. Your father would be proud." Marcella nodded, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you." Back at home, Marcella, Diego, and Helena sat together, reflecting on the events of the night. The house felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Marcella knew that there were still challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them. Helena took Marcella's hand. "I'm so proud of you, Marcella. Your father would be too. Marcella smiled, feeling a sense of peace. I couldn't have done it without you and Diego. We're a team. Diego leaned in, kissing her forehead. We always will be. The next morning, Marcella woke up feeling a sense of hope and renewal. She had confronted the darkness of her past and emerged stronger. She knew that the journey wasn't over, but she was ready to build a future free from fear and secrets. Marcella spent the day with her mother and Diego, making plans for the future. They talked about opening a small art studio, a dream Marcella had always had. It felt good to focus on something positive, something that would bring joy and creativity into their lives. As the sun set, Marcella sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. She thought about her father and the letter he had written to her. She knew that despite his mistakes, he had loved her deeply. And she was determined to honor his memory by living her life to the fullest. Marcella took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. The past was behind her, and the future was filled with possibilities. With her family by her side, she knew she could face anything that came her way. The days following the confrontation at the warehouse were a whirlwind of activity. Marcella and her family worked closely with the police to ensure that the evidence they had collected would lead to the conviction of the smugglers. The community buzzed with the news, and Marcella found herself at the center of attention, both praised for her bravery and scrutinized for the revelations about her father's past. Despite the challenges, Marcella felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced her fears and uncovered the truth, and now she was ready to build a new life. One evening, as she sat on the porch with Diego, she shared her dreams for the future. I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do next, Marcella said, gazing at the stars. I want to open an art studio, a place where people can come to create and express themselves. It's something I've always dreamed of. Diego smiled, squeezing her hand. I think that's a wonderful idea. You have so much talent, and it would be amazing to see you share it with others. Marcella felt a warmth spread through her. And I want you to be a part of it, Diego. You've been my rock through all of this. I can't imagine doing it without you. Diego leaned in and kissed her gently. I'm with you, Marcella. Whatever you need, I'm here. With Diego's support and encouragement, Marcella began planning the studio in earnest. She found a small, charming space in the heart of the town that was perfect for her vision. With Helena's help, they began transforming the space into a welcoming, creative environment. As they worked, Marcella felt a sense of healing and fulfillment. The process of creating something new and beautiful helped her to let go of the pain and trauma of the past. She poured her heart and soul into the studio, infusing it with her passion for art and her desire to help others find their own creative voices. On the day of the studio's grand opening, Marcella felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had invited friends, family, and members of the community to celebrate the beginning of this new chapter in her life. As people began to arrive, Marcella was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support and love. Helena, beaming with pride, stood by Marcella's side as she welcomed the guests. You've done an incredible job, my dear. Your father would be so proud. Marcella smiled, feeling a sense of peace. Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you and Diego. Diego wrapped an arm around her shoulders. This is just the beginning, Marcella. The future is bright. As the evening progressed, Marcella mingled with the guests, sharing stories and laughter. She felt a sense of connection and community that she had never experienced before. It was a reminder that despite the darkness of her past, there was light and love in her life. At one point, Marcella found herself standing in front of a large canvas she had painted. It was a vibrant, abstract piece that symbolized her journey, filled with twists and turns, but ultimately leading to a place of beauty and hope. Diego joined her, admiring the painting. It's beautiful, Marcella. Just like you. Marcella smiled, feeling tears of happiness well up in her eyes. Thank you, Diego. For everything. As the night drew to a close, Marcella took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. She had faced unimaginable challenges and uncovered painful truths, but she had emerged stronger and more determined than ever. She had reclaimed her life and found a new sense of purpose. With her family and friends by her side, Marcella knew that she could face whatever the future held. She was ready to embrace the possibilities and build a life filled with love, creativity, and hope. A year had passed since the grand opening of Marcella's art studio, Lembranca's, which had quickly become a beloved community space. The studio buzzed with creativity, laughter, and the vibrant energy of people discovering their artistic talents. Marcella stood in the studio one sunny afternoon, watching a group of children eagerly painting on their canvases. Their joy was infectious, and Marcella felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Her journey had led her here, to a place where she could help others find their voices and heal through art. Helena and Diego were constant presences in her life and in the studio. Helena often assisted with the children's classes, her nurturing spirit a source of comfort and inspiration. Diego, ever supportive, had become an integral part of the studio, managing the business side of things and ensuring that Marcella could focus on her art. One evening, as they closed up the studio, Marcella received a letter. It was from Eduardo, who had been following the trial of the smugglers closely. The letter contained news that brought closure. The smugglers had been convicted, and justice had been served. Eduardo expressed his pride in Marcella and his hope that she had found peace. Marcella read the letter with tears in her eyes, feeling a sense of resolution. She had faced her past, uncovered the truth, and emerged stronger. She had built a future that honored her father's memory while also forging her own path. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the studio, Marcella stood with Helena and Diego, looking out at the horizon. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but it had also been filled with growth, love, and new beginnings. With her mother and Diego by her side, Marcella knew that no matter what the future held, she was ready to face it. Together, they had built something beautiful from the fragments of the past, and the possibilities for the future were endless.